Hi, I'm Megan with the Vigilante Vibes podcast and with Nerd Initiative, where we review comics, movies, TV shows, and everything in between.
Yes, and I'm Lauren from Hot Geek News Podcast, and you can also find Megan and I every Wednesday in the Nerd Initiative Bullpen reviewing comics. And we are very excited because we both got to read the first two issues of Black Canary, Best of the Best. I will say it was absolutely phenomenal. I cannot wait to read the other issues, or should I say the other rounds, and we will get more to that. Today we have with us Tom King and Ryan Sook, who are the writer and the artist for this, and we are very excited. So thank you so much, guys, for coming and chatting with us. And I know it's very early for you guys, and we are ready to talk Black Canary.
First of all, I mean, thank you so much. It's been a rough kind of day, and I cannot tell you how much I was excited was to see you all on my calendar and just talk comics for a little while. So you're really bringing up my spirits. I can't say how much I appreciate you all for talking comics.
And we feel you more than you probably know as well. So so before we dive too much into the comic itself, I want to ask what made you guys pick Dinah Lance's Black Canary as your main character? And what came first, the character or the story?
Um, uh, it wasn't like a hard choice. I think Dinah's just one of the most um not underrated, but she has such utter potential, and she's been a star in the DC universe before. And frankly, she deserves more stories, I think is the better way to put it. I mean, she has an incredible power set. She has an incredible origin story. She has an incredible look. She's an iconic character that has had some iconic stories, and now she deserves at least one more. You know, she has that potential to be a pillar of the DC universe, to be another Superman, Batman, Robin, what have you. So that why Dinah is like why not Dinah? She's just fucking wonderful. Oh, sorry, I swear too much. She's effing wonderful. Um, and did the story and her came together. They came absolutely together. I was my son, my oldest son became obsessed with sort of WWE, and when I was a kid, I was obsessed with comic books. I know it's probably shocking to hear. But my parents thought it was just the dumbest thing that anyone could be into. It was very much sort of a trash hobby for them, and I had to kind of do it very quietly by myself. And I was not into WWE, but I was very determined not to do what my parents did with my son. And so I was like, let's watch this together. Let's experience this. This is your nerd, just like I had my nerd. Let's do this thing and bond over it. And so I just ended up watching a bunch of WWE with my kids, and I became sort of obsessed with. I can't believe they're telling so many stories in the four corners of a ring. Like that's just amazing to me. Like when I write comics, I write Superman comics. I have the entire universe. I have a multiverse. I don't even limit to the universe. I can go outside the multiverse. I can punch through a wall of the multiverse and see what's out there. And they're doing all these stories, and I was like, I love that challenge. I love that idea. And where do I start with a ring story? I want to start like the best ring stories like Ollie and Frazier or Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan. Like, who are the two best fighters in the DC universe, and what if I put them together in the ring? Who would be the champion? Who would be the contender? And that was Lady Shiva, Black Canary. That's number one and number two. So that's where the story started.
I think you just naturally answered our next question, which is no, that's always
I
perfect. When the
apologize.
answer
No, that's
comes up
awesome.
organically, yeah, that's amazing.
I
Yeah, because go ahead, Megan, you can go ahead
uh
and ask the next question.
uh I'll just ask mine next one because I'm a huge UFC fan. So I absolutely loved the constant commentary throughout both comics. So were they based on real life commentators?
Yes, a little bit, based on watching a ton of sort of fights and stuff, but also it was based on. I'm always trying in my books to do new ways to do captions, which is a silly thing to say about comics. But when you're writing comics, narrative captions can be the most boring part of the comic. But if you don't have them in a fight comic, you'll just end up not paying as much attention to Ryan Sook's art as you should, which is you should just be slime. You just turn the pages too quickly. I've written many comics where just like you don't slow down the reader enough because there aren't enough words in there. So I was sort of faced with like how do I put captions on this book to slow the readers down and still make those captions compelling and not just like interior monologue, boring, show don't tell captions. And I was struck that I could have the narrators, I could have these sort of, over the top announcers who are always announcing these things, and use that as my narrators of the entire story, both the flashbacks and the story in the ring. And so that's where it came from. And again, I stole sort of, I don't know, I stole from football announcers, I stole from baseball announcers, I stole from WWE announcers to create
You were
these two silly characters.
inspired by, you didn't steal,
Yes.
inspired by.
Inspired by, yes, Wordy John and Mike. Yeah.
Yes.
Who subtly have different characters and different ways of talking. So yeah, at
I
least
will
in my
say,
head.
when I was reading it, every time they were speaking, I was hearing it in that announcer, like, oh, look at this happening now. So I felt like it really helped me like get sucked more into the comic.
I channeled my inner Stanley, where Stanley hated periods, would only put exclamation points at the end of every sentence he ever wrote.
Yeah.
So every sentence the announcers have has an exclamation point at the end.
I mean,
Very
that's
very 1960s Marvel.
It adds to
makes
the
sense.
vibe.
100%. Now, Ryan, the art in these fight scenes was absolutely phenomenal, and it really captures the brutality of and the detail in the fight. So, what inspired this art for you? Are you also a WWE fan, or is it a little bit of UFC?
Yeah, both, but mainly the UFC stuff is what I was referencing because when I read the script, this fight is a brutal fight. It's
Yeah.
not there's no play acting involved, and despite the athleticism of all of the, like Tom was saying, they tell stories in the ring. But when you get into the UFC and MMA fights and stuff, it was it was brutal to go and look at that stuff for reference because I'd seen bouts and boxing and stuff over the years. Not a huge follower, but seen them. And you get punched in a ring in a boxing match, they count until someone gets back up or is knocked out. In the UFC, they jump on you and beat you until you can't move, and it's so brutal and shockingly brutal. It's hard to watch.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what this fight is. This fight is it's a fight to the finish. And so that was great reference for me. Shockingly brutal reference for me, but obviously, when you see stuff like that and you're trying to draw these scenes that Tom laid out, it's such a source of inspiration to try and bring that across because it deftly, as he did with the commentators who are narrating the flashback scenes and the fight, the flashbacks and those scenes that take place outside of the ring are so emotional. They're very emotional scenes, and there's a lot going on. It's all the heartfelt stuff, and it carries right into the ring. So when you're in the ring, though, you don't get to draw emotion. There's no emotion there. It's just bare knuckles and blood and guts, and yeah, you strip it all down to the fight, and then you can dance between that and those emotional scenes. Really
Well,
fun.
I think drawing, these characters, these comic book characters, and making somebody have that visceral reaction when somebody gets punched in the gut has got to be a difficult feat. And I will say you accomplished that because I was reading it and at one point Dinah gets punched and I literally like aloud went like, oof, like, you felt that like you were, watching it live kind of thing. And I do want to mention, and then I'm going to kick it back to Megan, is I'm not a WWE fan. I'm not a UFC fan. She is into this stuff. And I think we both equally fell in love with this comic immediately. It was such a great way to kind of story tell.
That's so awesome. That's the best thing. I appreciate that. That's right.
It showed so raw throughout the comic, like when Dinah is in the corner with her coach and she's just dead in the eyes, just has one motivation on her, and it's to beat Lady Shiva. And I thought the writing was phenomenal, the artwork was phenomenal, and it showed so well. And I see that every Saturday when I watch the fights, and it was just so, so perfectly handled.
Absolutely.
We're working on
But
3 now, and there's a moment in 3 where Ryan sort of drew the after effects of one of these blows, and I can't tell you, it tears me raw when I see it. I feel like I see Ryan's art and I feel the wounds on my face. It only gets sort of more desperate and more brutal as we go along. It's the point of the fight that this is something, she doesn't have to just win, she has to survive, both characters.
right. And now this comic, obviously, it isn't just about the fight. It's also a lot about her relationship with her mother. So, with her mother playing a big role in this story, and as all mothers do in every child's life, whether they're there or not, she shaped Dinah in many ways, physically and emotionally. And she was the original Black Canary. So, and she has a very unique parenting style. I will say that for sure. How are you hoping that readers perceive her mother, and do you think it will shape how people will view Dinah going forward?
I mean, I guess what I most hope from readers is they see a little bit of their relationship with their mother in this relationship, as messed up it is. I mean, the brilliance of comics, my favorite part of comics, is that we can kind of go to extremes to use metaphors of what feels extreme in our life.
Mhm.
You know, our what are microaggressions but what are microaggressions that tear us apart in the real world, we can present in comics as macroaggressions, so you can kind of experience them in a cathartic way. Um, and so this book is about, I mean, the fight is in the ring and it's about the fight, but what you're seeing in the ring, you know, the fight between Lady Shiva and Dinah is a metaphor of the fight between Dinah and her mother. This is a brutal, impactful, to the mat, to the extreme love story between a mother and a daughter, which seems contradictory, but I think if anyone's experienced a mother-daughter relationship, it can kind of feel that way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That there's no person, there's no love and no hate like that shared between a mother and a daughter, and that's what I was going for in the book. That's the heart of the book. That's what the book is about. It's about Dinah's relationship with her mother, who was a superhero before her, who in the greatest tradition, I think the best part of DC is our emphasis on legacy, and to talk about sort of what it means to grow up as a daughter of a superhero, and living her legacy, and having your own, and all of those issues. So yeah, that's where, you know, you start and end in this book, is Dinah and her mother.
Yeah, Tom nailed it. When I was really impressed when I read the script, the reaction and the dialogue and the reality between Dinah and her mom, and the way that I have a wife and two daughters, and obviously I have a sister and a mom and stuff, and the reality of their interactions it really weighs on me. And the cool part about this book is, outside of the ring, to draw it and make these characters real, to set them in the real world and have them living this real life, and then bring it all of that weight into the ring. Because here's a character like Dinah Lance, who's fought aliens and superpowers and has superpowers, and still she wants to live up to she wants mom to love her. She wants to make mom happy, and kind of hates that she does at the same time.
Yeah.
That is something that's really hard to bring across, and he did it great.
Well, I mean, a lot of it was in the faces of the characters too. You know, you see the trauma on her face and the shock on her face, on both their faces at different times. So yeah, you guys both did a great job with that.
Yeah. So I found it really interesting that Dinah's mother has been training her since she was a child. Do you think she always wanted Dinah to be the next Black Canary?
I, I I would say she wanted Dinah to be as strong as she was, is the way I would put it. I think when when you're a superhero, like Dinah Drake was, this sort of senior Dinah, um, you see the evils of the world, you see the worst in people, and you're trying to get better. And I think when you're constantly sort of exposed to that, you want your loved ones to be as strong as you are, because you think they have to survive what you've survived.
Mhm.
And I think that's the parental metaphor I was going for, is just like this sort of generational idea that I've been through trauma, you're going to go through trauma as well, and I have to prepare you for that. And in preparing you, I'm going to induce trauma in you, which is kind of the sort of perpetual cycle of um, a lot of parent-child relationships, going back generations. Uh, this sounds like such a heavy book when I talk about it. I
Yeah.
apologize. I swear to God, it's super fun and it's funny, and they're laughing. I'm talking about trauma and generations. It's no, this is a fight book with lots of jokes, but uh but like, you know, like works I've done before, like Supergirl, like Mr. Miracle. This is a book with you can enjoy on one level as just a fun read with amazing art, And then, on another level, you can enjoy this like you would, any novel. There are big themes here, for the comics have the smartest readers in the world, and they're there for people who want to see them.
Yeah, it definitely has layers for sure. So now going back to the art for a second, there is one scene in the issue with a ton of cameos. I don't want to say who they are or what they are. I don't want to spoil anything. It was such a fun page to just go through and try to find everybody and look at all that. So Ryan, how much detail and or freedom were you given to create that page, and how fun was that?
I feel like I got nothing but freedom and support from Tom and DC and everything
Yeah.
like that. But that said, I just drew what he wrote. I mean, Tom's a great writer, and I read the page, and it's set up that way. He set it up that way, which makes it fun for me to do the detail stuff that can't be written into a script, like who wears what casually when they're not,
Saving the
jumping from
world.
roof to roof, right? Or shooting laser beams and slinging arrows and such as this. Hint, hint. But when we do those kind of things, it is fun to put those characters into a real world setting and look at them and have fun trying to just kind of go, that is what they would be doing. That is how they would be dressing, and definitely that's what would be going on at that party right there. And yeah, that's always fun. I love taking those characters and putting them into human context. It's fun.
Yeah, and it makes the characters more relatable, which I always think is so much fun and makes the story all that much more deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up on, X-Men, Avengers, softball games, and all that stuff. So I think I was trying to sort of channel that. And Ryan is being way too modest. I think my instructions were something like they're, in a living room watching TV. Batman is not there. Go crazy, something like that. That that page is pure. Like when they say the artist is sort of the director and the DP and the costume. Yeah, that's all Ryan. Every gag and sort of cool moment in there. That's Sook being Sook.
You mentioned that, there's so many tones throughout Black Canary, Best of the Best. There's trauma, there is humor. And, it shows a lot the most when they're switching the scenes from the past to the present during the fight. Do you find it challenging to switch back and forth while keeping the overall tones aligned?
No, I find that to be sort of the most fun part of the books, and it makes it a lot easier to write. That's sort of like when I'm writing a 3-page fight scene, I can cut to a flashback. Um, you know, as you guys know better than I do, comics are all about sort of the images that exist um, in between the panels in the gutters. Like our characters don't move, they don't talk, you can't hear them. It's we're inducing things that go into your head, and then you imagine the rest of the book. So, if I can give you um per one round 10 pages of a fight, you have to put in the other, that's only like what, like 3 seconds to what you have to put in the other 2 minutes and 57 seconds or whatever it is. I think they're 6-minute rounds. So, by cutting away, I get to imply what's going on in the rest of the ring, and I get to your imagination. It's like what's going on when they're back in the ring, and so it helps. It makes the fight better. And no, I didn't find switching the tones, because to me they had um they were very yin and yang. They played off each other super well, like going from loud to quiet, and made the quiet quieter and the loud louder, and so it was almost it was easier. It flowed very well one into the other.
Yeah, and that made it fun to draw too. That narrative continuity with visual contrast makes it really, really fun when you know what the captions are and you know what you're reading and what they're describing happening in the ring, but you're looking at something very different. I thought that was a blast to draw, and some of the scene changes, the way that they were written in the script, like you know, uh, when Dinah Lance comes into her mom's shop and rings the counterbell, and the fight begins. Ding, here we go, we're off to the races, and I just thought that was it's just fun
Mhm.
to me when you're reading a story like that to have those sort of narrative transitions and continuity and stuff. It just makes it fun. It's not what I expect, and yet it's just very, very. It flows very smoothly and makes for a fun read.
Yeah.
And it's very comic booky, that like it wouldn't work in, I did all this television writing. It wouldn't work in television to have a quiet scene in a Washington Island, and then run the narration from these two, over the top commentators in the background. Like it's not something you could do. And in a novel, I started out as a novelist. It's not something you could even start to comprehend. So it's like only in comics can we do these kind of transitions, and we got to take advantage of like what's the best media.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's why it's so important to have comics for every age group, because there's so many great stories that you just can't tell otherwise.
100%.
So as we begin to wrap up, we both obviously love this so much. We've made that comment more than once. And this story is expected to go 6 issues or 6 rounds, you could say. Will we see more of this story grow in the future, or is that all up to us as the readers?
I mean, I've told Ryan whatever he wants to do next, I'll do whatever he wants to do. So if he's like, Tom, I really want to do more fight scenes, I'll find a way to write. So yeah, but no, this is a self-contained story along the lines, if you've read like My Human Target or Mr. Miracle. You're going to get a beginning and a middle and end. You're going to get a thrilling ride, and you're going to get some tears along the way. And it'll wrap up in 6. There's no to be continued at the end.
I mean, already so much has happened in the first 2 issues.
Yeah.
So, yeah, before Megan closes this out, any other things you guys would like to say other than this comes out November 27th and everybody should go pick it up?
I mean, I said this at the beginning, but I'll say it at the end. Thank you to your listeners. Thank you for everyone. This is a comic that Black Canary doesn't have a tradition of being purchased. So a lot of people going in comic stores don't be like, hey, anything Black Canary, let me have it, because she just doesn't have a title that you would say that like you would with having worked on Batman and Superman titles. So I just so appreciate you all getting the word out, just because I love this comic so much, and I want to stand behind it and say that this could be the next Supergirl. This is a comic that needs recommendations. It needs to be sort of hand sold, and I just, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you all doing this.
Hey man, I'm right there with Tom with that. Thank you so much for helping us to promote the book, because it's a great book, and I get the lettering comps back from editorial, and we go through them, and I'm really proud to be a part of the book. It's a cool comic, and you always do your best work, but it's great when you do your best work and the book is good, and this one is. So yeah, that's something I appreciate you guys taking the time to help us let people know that.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And anybody still on the fence, I mean, this has action, it has comedy, it has drama, it has toxic parenting, it's got gorgeous artwork. Like, I don't know what else you need.
That is our cover quote. Please make sure I record that and put that right there on the cover, because that's better than anything I said this whole 30 minutes.
That's our next title, Tom.
Yeah, that's all.
Parenting.
Yeah, that should be the title.
So we want to thank you, Tom and Ryan, for giving us this time to talk about it, because, obviously, like we've said many times, we loved it. It was phenomenal from beginning to end, and I cannot wait to read more. She's one of my favorite characters, so this was just such a pleasure. Everyone, hit up those local shops. Go find the Black Canary comics. We got to keep this going, because this is something really special. Black Canary, Best of the Best, will hit shelves November 27th. Thank you, Tom and Ryan. Make sure you're following Nerd Initiative on all socials to stay up to date on all things nerdy.
In the show notes, you can also find, you can follow Tom and Ryan in the show notes, and you can follow Megan and I with Vigilante Vibes Podcast and Geek News Podcast as well.